Welcome to my channel, The Historic State. When we think of war heroes, we imagine soldiers charging into battle, rifles blazing. But history holds a deeper, quieter truth. The most ferocious battles are not always fought with bullets, but with hope, compassion, and an unbreakable will to live. Today, we tell the forgotten saga of a small, underestimated unit, trapped in the heart of enemy territory, who achieved an impossible mission with no weapons at all. They were hairdressers, students, mothers. They were also the most dangerous women the Nazis ever faced. Their story is a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who refuse to let the light go out in the darkest of places. Noah's 9th year is 1944. Inside the notorious Santo Tomas Internment Camp in the Philippines, death is a constant companion. Thousands of American soldiers and civilians, captured after the fall of Corregidor, are wasting away from starvation and disease. Their Japanese captors watch on with cold indifference. Yet, in the middle of this living hell, there is an island of defiance. A small unit of women, Army and Navy nurses, who have turned a derelict barracks into a functioning hospital. They are prisoners, starved and weak, but they have not surrendered. They were not trained soldiers, they were healers. So why were their captors more afraid of their quiet resilience than any armed battalion? Known. Just 3 years earlier, their world was a different place. Lieutenant Ellie Vance and her fellow nurses were known as the Angels of Bataan. They were serving in the American Philippines, a tropical paradise. Their life was one of discipline, service, and the quiet satisfaction of healing. They were the best of the best, highly trained professionals who believed in their duty to care for the soldiers of the United States. They were prepared for injuries, for tropical diseases, but no one was prepared for the sheer ferocity of the Japanese invasion that followed the attack on Pearl Harbor. As General MacArthur's forces were pushed back in a desperate retreat to the Bataan Peninsula, the nurses retreated with them. Their clean, sterile hospitals were replaced by makeshift wards in the dense, malarial jungles. They worked in open-air bamboo shelters, under constant threat of Japanese bombing raids and artillery fire. The wounded poured in, an endless tide of broken bodies and shattered minds. They performed surgeries with failing light, using sterilized razor blades for scalpels. Supplies dwindled to almost nothing. Quinine for malaria ran out. Food was scarce. Yet, the nurses worked on, their white uniforms now tattered and stained, their faces etched with exhaustion, but their spirits unbroken. They were a beacon of hope in a world descending into chaos. But hope was a finite resource. After months of brutal fighting, Bataan fell. The nurses watched in horror as their patients, the men they had fought so hard to save, were marched away on what would become the infamous Bataan Death March. The nurses, now prisoners themselves, were sent to the Santo Tomas Internment Camp. Their war wasn't over. It had just entered a new, more terrifying chapter. Their new battlefield was a squalid prison camp, and their impossible mission was to keep thousands of starving prisoners alive with nothing but their bare hands and their unyielding will. NNTHE camp was designed to break people. The commandant, Colonel Tanaka, was a man who believed in breaking the spirit before the body. He saw the American nurses not as military officers, but as mere women, and he was determined to crush their discipline. He denied them medicine, cut their already meager rations, and mockingly told them that their ranks and titles meant nothing here. He expected them to dissolve into a weeping, chaotic mob. He was wrong. Led by Ellie, who became their de facto commanding officer, the nurses refused to be broken. They organized themselves with iron discipline. They created a functioning hospital out of a filthy, abandoned building, scrubbing it from top to bottom. They fashioned surgical tools from scrap metal and sterilized bandages by boiling them in rusty cans. They started a secret smuggling ring, trading personal trinkets with sympathetic guards for a few precious quinine pills or a handful of rice. They maintained their morning roll calls, their uniforms patched but clean, their posture straight. In a sea of despair, their small ward became an island of order, cleanliness, and hope. This quiet, organized defiance infuriated Colonel Tanaka. He couldn't understand them. He couldn't break them.
The ultimate test came in the winter of 1944. A deadly diphtheria outbreak swept through the camp, preying on the weakened children and elderly. It was a death sentence. Ellie, desperate, went before Colonel Tanaka, begging him for the antitoxin she knew he had in the Japanese medical stores. He looked at her with cold eyes and refused. "The weak die," he said. "That is the law of nature and of war." That night, Ellie gathered her nurses. Their faces were grim. They had only one choice left. It was a suicide mission, but they had to try. They would raid the Japanese supply hut, and under the cover of a moonless night, they put their desperate plan into action. Two nurses staged a loud, distracting argument, a performance so convincing it drew the attention of the bored guards. As the guards moved to intervene, Ellie and another nurse slipped through the shadows, their movements silent and practiced. They reached the medical hut. With trembling hands, using a piece of sharpened wire, Ellie picked the rusty lock. Inside, they found a small crate of the precious diphtheria antitoxin. Grabbing as much as they could carry, they slipped back into the darkness, their hearts pounding in their chests, just moments before a guard returned to his post. Then, they worked through the night, secretly administering the life-saving medicine. In the days that followed, the miracle they had prayed for began to happen. The fever broke. The children began to recover. Hundreds of lives were saved. Colonel Tanaka was furious. He knew what they had done, but he couldn't prove it without admitting his own negligence. He punished them by cutting their rations even further, but as he looked at Ellie, he no longer saw just a woman. He saw an officer, an enemy he could not defeat because she fought with weapons he did not understand. Finally, in February 1945, their ordeal ended. American forces liberated the camp. The Angels of Bataan and Corregidor, as they came to be known, were finally safe. They were emaciated, sick, but they had survived, and more importantly, they had kept hundreds of their fellow prisoners alive through their sheer, unyielding will. They were hailed as heroes, their story a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And their battlefield was not one of mud and bullets, but of hope against despair. Their weapons were not rifles and grenades, but compassion, discipline, and an unbreakable spirit. The story of these underestimated women proves that the fiercest warriors are not always the ones who take lives, but the ones who stubbornly, defiantly refuse to let life be extinguished. They were not just nurses, they were soldiers in the truest sense of the word. Ninti, thank you for watching The Histroic State. If this incredible story of sacrifice and resilience moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because here, we honor the hidden heroes, whose courage deserves to be remembered forever.